Phyllis Logan, starting off this next quarter with you, and for everyone out there, Happy New Year. We have a topic that is truly important this evening, but I first want to give you some information on who we are and where you can reach out to us at. So we are the Chicago Westside branch NAACP, located at 5820 West Chicago Avenue. Our office phone number right there, 773-261-5890. And we want to give a shout out to our president, Carl Brenson, who's doing a very good job at running and being our leader for the next year, 2 years or so. Our general membership meetings are the first Saturday of every month. This Saturday, tomorrow actually, is our first meeting for the month of April. We are open to the public, and as always, membership is power. So with that, we want to talk about a very important topic that we've been involved in for the last year and a half, if not 2 years, coming up to next year, 2020. The census. For all of you who are not familiar with what the census is all about, we want to give you some information. We want to talk to you and help get you prepared. We want to educate, but we're also advocating that the census rings true for all of us and its activities. So the census is done every 10 years. Every 10 years. So the last time if you heard the word census, it was in 2010. The U.S. Census conducts a census to determine the number of people living in the United States. This is truly important. Why do they do the census? The census data, as it states, is used by the government in a variety of important decisions. And this is where we all step in. There's over $600 billion in federal funds each year that comes into every state within the United States. It determines where funding goes for our roads, our bridges, our schools, where they are built, and these dollars are appropriated by the federal government. Once again, the census is coming up in 2020, and this past Monday, April 1st, was our launch for the 2020 to start advocating and educating our community stakeholders to let you know that you should be counted. What to expect from the census is what we want to discuss this evening. So going back to the overhead, who's counted? Why count? Well, everyone, wherever you live, on April 1st, 2020, a census survey questionnaire will be sent to that household. It asks you to give information on who is residing under your roof. We not only count people in the usual spaces, houses, apartments, and so on. We count college students living from dorms or living wherever their college residency is. We count the incarcerated persons, those that are in prison facilities, but those that have returned to citizenship, we count them where they live. People that are experiencing homelessness, service-based enumerators, those are the people who actually knock on your door to ask who's in your household. Those people, wherever you live, whether you are in a shelter or otherwise, we look for you to be counted. The Census 2020 takes us into a new arena. As you know, Chicago, we just got a new mayor, an exciting new path that we're on right now. But we're hoping that the new mayor's interest in the census is just as important as receiving other federal dollars for anything that the city of Chicago needs. We're also hoping that it's important to our commissioners, Cook County commissioners. We're within the Cook County of Illinois. We're hoping that our commissioners are also paying attention to the census and are helping us, the NAACP, go out and educate and advocate for all persons to be counted that day. Then we go on to the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois plays a big role because it receives federal funds to make sure that we can have boots on the ground, people within the community, the people you trust and respect, like the NAACP, educating you by way of public forums, bringing you out to any type of public event at our parks, within our schools, also within our neighborhoods, the block clubs, and so on and so forth. When you hear the NAACP speaking about the census, you can be assured that we're doing the best we can to make sure that all of our residents within the city of Chicago, within Cook County, within the state of Illinois are counted. The funding that comes with this, as I stated, goes directly to our schools. So let's start with our school system. For every family household member that's in that residence on April 1st, you will be asked to give information on them. Maybe their date of birth. I've not seen the questionnaires yet. Their age, definitely their age. And the reason why the age is important, because if there are many more that are undercounted prior to the 2020 census, say in 2010, if we had more kids in 2010 than were accounted for throughout since 2011, then that means that many of our schools that were closed because those children were undercounted. It's important that they know, the government knows how many kids live within our communities. It helps them to fund our school systems. Not only our school systems, but it also helps them to service medical needs. Every child needs medical service. So without federal funding coming into our communities, if we're undercounted, that means that there's very less reserves or very few dollars that are made available to service the many people that live within our communities. And this is important because not only do we lose out on school system services, appropriations for dollars to fund our schools, to give our kids a quality education, we also lose out on medical assistance that's needed for our youth, for our kids, but we also lose out on other things, other services that are needed within our community. A grocery store. You know that Chicago's blighted communities do not offer quality grocery for us. Vegetables, fruits, fresh fruits on a daily basis. If the community is undercounted, that means that there's no need for the service. And if we can show in 2020 that there's a need for all of these services, for our kids, for our babies, for our adults, for our elderly, then that's where you count. That's where you matter. And as we always say, every vote counts, every person counts when it comes to the counting in the U.S. Census. So once again, we're going to go back to the overhead and show you that individuals that are incarcerated, this is considered a hard-to-count population. The reason why the incarcerated is hard to count is because they live in many places and spaces within our neighborhood. Many times they feel that if they are responding to the census questionnaire, that the government will know where they live. Well, the Census Bureau is a separate part of the government. And it's being told that this information is not shared with the regular part of the federal government. There's many concerns out there that if you tell them who you are and where you live, that they'll come looking for you if you have concerns. We have a caller. I'm going to let this caller come in, and then we'll get back to the information. Caller, your question or comment?
Yeah, my name is Johnny. What you're saying is true. Again, they will come look for you because they do that every time. And things ain't going to change. And the federal ain't going to change. The law ain't going to change. They're going to keep on doing it. Like you said, they gonna, like if you tell them where you live at, they're going to keep on looking for you. And I think the media is helping the people, the law enforcement, to do that.
Well, I appreciate your call in, and I want to clarify one other thing, is that the federal government, once again, the federal government should not, the Census Bureau should not share this information, your data, with any other parts of the federal government. The census's only purpose is to count the number of people who live in the United States. And that's important because that's how they appropriate federal dollars into certain spaces within our communities. So we have to, we have to understand how government works. The federal government says that if I've got 100 people in a community and there are no roads that are up to par for vehicles to come in, and of course they want to engineer the economics, so people need to buy vehicles, but you can't drive your vehicle on roads that are not paved. If the government knew that there were 100 people in that community, then they can appropriate dollars to give you a clear path to drive your vehicle. That's really how simple the census is supposed to be. But there's a big fear out there that individuals feel like if they do this census questionnaire, if they report who they are and where they live at a given address on April 1st, then the government has access to them to come out and get them for whatever reason. We need to dispel that myth. I can take you back to the 1800s when the census got started 100 plus years ago. Every person, including the slaves, were counted because that's how the government appropriated the dollars for those communities. So in the southern corridors, let's take Alabama out of all of the states in the United States. Let's take Alabama, or let's go to Mississippi. There was a population of slaves in Mississippi picking cotton, weren't even identified as a whole human being. But they gave us a tag of 3/4 of a person. The reason why they did that was because those cities within that state needed dollars appropriated to them from the federal government to do something as simple as paving a road. That's how much counting individuals meant back then. Now we're considered whole persons. Every whole person, according to, excuse me, I'm getting over something. Every whole person, according to the census and how they divvy out funding, is $2.50 per person when it comes to federal funding. But guess what? Over the course of, and I'm possibly misquoting my numbers, I apologize, but over the course of 10 years, every year, the state has appropriated federal dollars according to a dollar amount. And let's say that every person is worth $1,500 per year. Over a course of 10 years, that's $15,000 per person within our communities of federal dollars that we would not receive if we're not properly and accurately counted. So, audience, please, the census is coming up, and we're going to be talking about it more over the next few months. The NAACP is going to be very active in making sure that we advocate and educate our community stakeholders, our communities, to know that being counted, answering, responding to the questionnaires is a must. It is not something that we get to guess over, ponder over, or just not be counted. It's just like not voting. If you don't vote, how can you argue about who's representing you? If you don't answer this questionnaire and the services don't come to your community, who can you blame? If you're asking for services, if you need services, if services are required in your neighborhood, but the government doesn't know how many people in that population exist, then they cannot fund everyone to get appropriate service. It's really just that simple. But 312-738-1060. Give me a call. I'm Phyllis Logan, your host for this evening, and we're hoping that we can educate. And if you're listening, for those out there in our audience right now, if you're listening, please let your family members, your friends, your associates know, Come April 1st, 2020, wherever you live that day, that's where you need to account for yourself. The questionnaire comes in the mail prior to April 1st. On April 1st, that day, wherever you're residing at, doesn't matter if you're in an apartment, in a home, in a shelter, on the streets, wherever you report to get your services from, if you're homeless, you need to be counted at that location. And if you're within the city of Chicago and all of our blighted communities that have been unfunded, underdeveloped for many years, we need to know how many people truly live within our different wards, within our different communities, and it's a must. So please, share this information with your family and your friends and your associates that come next year, April 1st, 2020, those questionnaires are due, and you have to account for everyone in your family. We are labeled within many communities within the city of Chicago as, and many other communities throughout the state of Illinois, and our rural communities as well, and our immigrant communities as well, we're labeled as the hard to count. Let's talk about why it's hard to count many people within our communities. And this one you can have a conversation with your family and friends and associates on a daily basis. We're hard to count and our communities are underfunded. Why are we hard to count? Because many times we have the first number one issue is whether or not we want the government to know that we reside in a certain place and space. We know when we talk about babies under 5 years of age who have been truly undercounted in the past prior to 2010, babies under five. And let's say we have several family members under one roof. The head of the household, whoever's name is on that mailbox, needs to list everybody in that house that day. But because we are anticipating our own individual services, whether it be health care for our children or daycare funding for our children so that the mother can go to work, we feel that if we put our names on that questionnaire, counting ourselves as part of the household in that house, on that block, that we will lose our individual rights to the services that our individual families need. Well, guess what? This is not that type of process. The government needs to know everybody under that roof on April 1st. So if we've got 3 single moms with children under 5, all needing the benefits that are required in that community, daycare, health care, adequate school services, as well as a decent grocery outlet to buy food for our babies. If we're not counted that day, then the government doesn't feel a need to fund that community. Our babies under 5 years of age have been undercounted for many years. And we have to look at our blighted communities and see what's going on. Equate your situation to the services that are not in your community, and that is where we're at right now. We're losing federal funds because we're not being counted. And the government won't send thousands of dollars to your community if they don't know that you have needs and that you exist, number one. So the importance of the census is really to tell the government there are 100 people over there and they need adequate services. We're entitled to quality education. We're entitled to exercise our right to vote. We're entitled to so many things, health care. But if we don't tell the government we exist, how can we be assured that our communities will be properly funded for us to get the needed services that the government allows us to have? It is truly important that we wake up, and wake up. But over the next course of the next few months, all the way into April, We're hoping that the NAACP can get your attention, get you involved, educate you on why the census matters, and help you, assist you by any means that we can to help you fill out that questionnaire. We'll be having educational sessions ongoing starting after the month of May or June of this year. And if we announce them on air here at CAN TV, we're hoping that you not only call in, but you participate, attend any sessions that we have on giving you the information that you need for the Census 2020. Once again, we're at 312-738-1060. If you have questions, please call in. There is some other information going on. It's called the self-response. So let me touch on this for a minute, and we'll be able to talk about this further in the weeks to come. Self-response is when you get the census. It comes to the house, and it asks you about your household, which is a group of people comprised of family members or non-relatives living under who occupy that space. So once again, if you have your niece, nephew, grandmother, grandfather, cousins, whomever is living in your house that day is considered part of your household. The Census Bureau is going to assign each household, one household at a time. They're going to assign you a unique ID number, and that's where the mail goes, to the physical address, to the head name that's on that property. If it's a 2-unit, each unit will get their own. If it's a 4-unit, if it's an apartment building, each household, whoever's name is on that mailbox, will get their own questionnaire. One person in the household, the lead name on the mailbox or whomever, fills out the form. We have to bring every person gathered around that table, on that couch, whatever. We've got to bring every person to the table to get their correct name, maybe the Social Security number. We'll have all those answers coming soon, what questions are on the questionnaire. But every person in the house that day on April 1st needs to be included on this questionnaire. If there's more than one person in the household, whether you're legal or not, immigrants, whether you're legal or not, that person's name needs to be included on that questionnaire. I don't have to go back and say again how important this is, that every person is counted, but it's important that every person be counted. No one needs to come to your door if you do your own self-response. Fill out the questionnaire, fill it out as completely as possible, and mail it out. The information has to be as accurate as possible. The information, let's see, what are they saying here? It leaves more monies behind to the government if they are not counting you. Historically, areas with lower self-response tend to have the higher undercount, which is the point that we were making. Our communities, because we're unaware of how the census works, we don't feel a need to share all of the members within under that roof in the household. We don't feel a need to add their information to this questionnaire. This questionnaire is so important to how we receive resources to our community. And we're going to talk more on this in the next week or so. And I want you to be prepared with your questions or comments. And we will be here next Friday at 6 p.m. And I really want you to think about how you are concerned about the census or the information, as well as how we can assist you with filling out the census once the questionnaires are put out there. But, you know, we're here to help. We are the NAACP, and we're located at 5820 West Chicago Avenue. Our monthly meetings are the first Saturday of every month at 1 p.m. We are open to the public, and we welcome any new memberships members that want to be a part of our Chicago Westside branch, we welcome you. Tomorrow, Saturday, is a meeting, 1 p.m., 5820 West Chicago Avenue. And I am Phyllis Logan, your host for the next couple of weeks. Our young ladies will be back within 2 weeks. They're out doing some training right now. But we, as always, we are steadfast and immovable because we are the NAACP, and we welcome every question, call, concern to call us in and see where we can assist you. Membership is power. I thank you very much for your time this evening, and we look to hear from you hopefully next Friday, God's will. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.